On a reef floor that looks like nothing gray sand, a little rubble, no coral worth the swim a shrimp is digging. It cannot see you. It has been hauling sand since dawn, and it will haul sand until dark, building a house it did not choose to build alone. And the whole time, one antenna is stretched behind it, resting on the tail of a fish, watching for both of them. Divers cross this ground without stopping. They are heading for the wall, for the coral heads, for the color. This is the flat, boring part of the reef you swim over on the way to somewhere better. You have passed over the strangest working arrangement in the ocean, and you are looking at the horizon. Two animals live in that hole in the sand. Neither one could hold that ground alone for a week. The shrimp can build. It builds constantly, obsessively, with a body designed for moving Earth in the dark. What it cannot do is see danger coming. The fish can see that is almost the whole of what the fish is, a pair of eyes mounted on a body small enough to fit through a doorway. What the fish cannot do is dig. It has no tool for it. On open sand, a fish that cannot dig is not a resident. It is a meal with a schedule. So they made an arrangement. One builds the shelter, one watches the door, and between them runs a single line of contact that has to hold every second they are both outside. I want to walk you through that arrangement, the way it actually works, not the version where two animals become friends, but the version the evidence supports. Because there's a part of this that the pretty telling always leaves out. There is a payment involved. It is made daily, inside the burrow, and once you know what it is, you will never see this partnership as sentimental again. Start with the digger, because the digger got there first. Watch a pistol shrimp work. And the first thing you notice is that it does not look like an animal exploring. It looks like an animal on a shift. It backs out of the tunnel mouth, pushing a load of sand ahead of it, dumps it, turns, goes back down. Then again, then again. The pile beside the door grows through the morning like spoil beside a mine. Researchers put tiger pistol shrimp under a medical scanner and photographed the tunnels forming underneath them, over and over, as they were being dug. What comes back is not a burrow, it is architecture. The tunnels ran roughly a foot long, some of them branching, and they sat in a narrow band of depth a little under 2 inches down, no more than a couple of inches at the deepest. And the whole structure went in inside a single afternoon, 4.5 hours, start to finish, in the dark, by hand. Then there is the detail that stays with you. Whatever the shrimp did with the shape of the tunnel, the width converged. Every burrow settled into the same narrow range, barely wider than a finger, just wide enough for the body that made it and the fish that would move in. It does not build a room. It builds a fit. And it never stops building. Sand is not stone. Every current that crosses this ground takes some of the ceiling with it, and every ceiling that comes down has to be carried out again, load, by an animal working blind in a tunnel the width of its own back. The house is not something the shrimp made. It is something the shrimp is making, permanently, for its whole life. Which raises the obvious question. If this animal is that vulnerable, soft, slow, hauling sand with its face in the sediment, why is anything on this reef willing to let it live? Because the digger is armed. The oversized claw on a pistol shrimp is not a claw in the way you are picturing. When it closes, it does not grab. It fires a jet of water forward at about 25 meters per second, fast enough that the water behind the jet cannot hold together, and a bubble of vapor tears open in its wake. Then the sea slams that bubble shut. That collapse is the snap you hear all over a shallow reef, the constant frying bacon crackle in every underwater recording ever made. And when physicists finally photographed the collapse, they found something nobody expected. The bubble flashes. For an instant, as it is crushed, it gives off light, which means the inside of that collapsing pocket of water reaches temperatures of at least 5,000 Kelvin. Read that again. An animal the length of your thumb, working blind in the sand, closes its hand and briefly makes a spark hotter than the surface of most stars. That is the tenant. Now, meet the landlord's problem, because none of it helps if you cannot see what is coming. The fish sits in the doorway. not near it. In it, body angled out, tail still inside the tunnel mouth, so that the whole animal can be gone in a fraction of a second. And it does almost nothing. That is the part that unsettles people who watch it for the first time. It does not patrol. It does not chase. It holds position at the mouth of a hole it did not dig, in the exact spot where a small fish on open sand is most exposed, and it watches. For hours. It is not resting there. It is posted there. When something wrong comes across the sand, the fish speaks, and it speaks with its tail. The signal is a flick. Not a swim stroke, not a startle. A short, sharp beat of the tail, and it carries meaning that is more precise than it has any right to be. Experiments that walked predator models toward burrows and held live predators near them found that the flicking is not a single alarm. Gobies signal at two clearly different rates, a slow one and a fast one, and the tests held across three completely different pairings, different goby genera, different shrimp species, the same two-speed code. That is not a shout. That is a vocabulary. One word for something is out there. One word for now. And here is what makes the whole thing land. The shrimp cannot hear any of it. There is no sound in this exchange, no flash, no gesture it could catch across a meter of water. Everything the fish knows has to travel down a physical line of contact, or it does not travel at all, which brings us to the line itself. The shrimp's antenna is long, thin, and almost always behind it. Not waving, not searching. Laid deliberately along the body of the fish and kept there while it digs, while it hauls, while it turns around in the tunnel mouth with a load of sand pressed against its chest. The antenna stays on the fish. It is the first thing the shrimp puts out when it comes up, and the last thing it takes back. When this was first studied properly, in the northern Red Sea, the finding was blunt enough to reframe the entire relationship. The warning signals reach the shrimp through that antenna. And without the contact, there are no warning signals at all, not weaker ones, none. Which means the touch is not affection and it is not comfort. It is the wire the alarm runs down. Break the contact and the fish is still a perfectly good sentry watching a perfectly real predator, and the shrimp below it is simply a blind animal in the open, being warned by nobody. So how strong is that line really? A few years ago, a team on the Great Barrier Reef found a way to ask. They took 123 of these burrow partnerships and ran motorboat noise over them, then filmed what happened. The noise worked. Both animals lost their nerve in ways you could measure the fish giving up around a fifth of its time outside, the shrimp bolting for cover a third more often, depending on the engine. Two animals, frightened, on film, in numbers. And one thing did not move. Across every treatment they tried, the amount of time the two of them spent physically touching stayed flat. Roughly 2/3 of the time in contact before the engines, and the same after. The world got loud. Both of them got scared. Neither one let go. And the line matters more, not less, as the light goes. Watch this ground at dusk, and you will see the arrangement close for the night. The fish stops reading the water. It turns, and it goes in not to hover at the entrance, but all the way down, into a tunnel it has no ability to build or repair, and it stays there until morning. The reviews of this partnership are clear about what the burrow is to a goby. A shelter it ducks into by day, a bedroom it sleeps in every night, and the safe place where it breeds. Its eggs are down there. Think about what that actually means. Every night, an animal whose entire survival strategy is seeing danger first voluntarily gives up its eyes. It goes somewhere with no sightlines, no exits it controls, and no light, and it puts the next generation on the wall of a house that belongs to someone else, a house made of wet sand, which is to say a house that is quietly falling down all night long, and which stays standing only because the other animal keeps getting up to fix it. By day, the shrimp is trusting the fish with its life. By night, the fish is trusting the shrimp with everything it has ever made. At which point, most tellings of this story reach for the word friendship. I want to do the opposite, because the truth is better. Nothing about this is affection. Each of these animals is exploiting the single thing the other one is exceptional at, and neither is giving anything away it can afford to keep. The shrimp digs because it must dig. It would dig alone. The fish watches because it is watching for itself first. The flick that saves the shrimp is a flick from an animal that is already halfway home. Strip the warmth out of it, and the arrangement does not weaken. It gets sturdier. Sentiment is optional. This is not. And then there is the rent. For a long time, the arrangement looked lopsided on paper. The fish gets a bunker, a nursery, and a bolt hole it could never excavate. What exactly does the shrimp get? Beyond an alarm bell. The answer came from a 2-week experiment, and it is not decorous. Field observers had noticed something odd. Gobies feed outside, sometimes for hours, and then do not defecate out there. They go home to do it. Meanwhile, the shrimp, which barely forages beyond its own doorstep, somehow stays fed. Tested in the lab, the obvious explanation held up. The droppings the fish leaves inside the burrow are a genuine food source for the shrimp, not a bonus, but part of what keeps it alive. So the fish does pay for the room, every day, in the only currency it produces. That is what a functioning contract looks like when you take the soft focus off it, and it is worth saying plainly. This arrangement is not a rare accident. Roughly 130 species of goby are known to live this way, with around 20 species of pistol shrimp. And when the genetics were run, the partnership turned out to have arisen twice among Indo-Pacific gobies, 2 separate lineages, arriving independently at the same solution. Evolution ran the experiment more than once and got the same answer both times. Now, I have to hand back something I told you at the start. I opened by saying the shrimp cannot see. That is how this animal is almost always described: the blind digger, the sightless builder. And the most careful measurements we have say it is not true. Someone finally sat down and tested the eye of a snapping shrimp properly, including the hood of shell that grows over it, the very feature that made everyone assume blindness in the first place. That hood turns out to be a window. It passes 80 to 90% of visible light straight through. Behind it sits a working compound eye that resolves motion quickly and picks up the blue-green light that fills shallow water. So the shrimp is not blind, it sees. But hold on to the number, because the number is the whole story. Its finest resolvable detail is somewhere around 8 degrees of arc. Hold your fist out at arm's length and look at it. Everything inside that fist, the shrimp receives as a single smear of brightness. It can tell that the light changed. It cannot tell you what changed it, and that is a harder truth than blindness, not a softer one. A blind animal has an excuse. This one has just enough vision to know that something is happening on the sand above it, and no way on earth to learn whether the shape crossing its tunnel is a passing wrasse or the thing that eats it. It has the alarm without the information. That is the gap the fish fills. Not sight. Judgment. The fish is not the shrimp's eyes. The fish is the shrimp's ability to know what it is looking at. And now look at what the entire arrangement rests on. Not the claw, for all its 5,000 Kelvin. Not the burrow, for all its engineering. Not the fish's eyes. It rests on one thin antenna laid across one small tail, a contact so light that a diver a meter away cannot see it happening. The smallest thing in this story carries the most weight. Sever that thread, and every other part of the machine still works perfectly and saves nobody. The claw fires at nothing. The eyes watch for a partner who never hears. The house stands with a dead animal outside the door. Everything here is held up by a touch. Somewhere on that flat gray ground right now, the shift is still running. The tide is going over. The sand is coming down inside the tunnel the way it always does, and a small armed animal that cannot quite see is backing out of its own doorway, with another load pressed to its chest, dumping it, turning, going back down. Above it, a fish that will not feed while it is on duty holds the door and reads the water. And stretched between them, doing all the work that matters, is a single antenna resting on a tail. Still there, still touching, Still, the only thing standing between a good house and an empty one. Next time you swim over the boring part of the reef, the flat, the rubble, the gray sand nobody photographs, slow down and look for a small pile of fresh spoil beside a hole. Something is on duty there. It has been on duty the whole time. If you want more of the small things holding up the big ones, subscribe. That is genuinely the entire pitch. And if you have ever seen this handshake in the wild, tell me where, because I would like to know how far it goes.